all, and welcome back to the Minnesota Homestead. Today we are going to talk about canning essentials. I water bath can, so I'm only going to be talking about that. We're not going to refer to pressure canning or anything there. If you follow me on Instagram or my blog or my YouTube channel like this, you'll know that I'm a big fan of picking wild berries, and all year I've been eagerly awaiting the opportunity to start canning them into jams, jellies, preserves, do the apple butter and applesauce and all kinds of things like that. But before we get into any videos and recipes specific to any of those items, I just want to lay the groundwork for what you need for traditional water bath canning. The first item is a big crock to actually water bath can your items. So I've got a big one right here. You can get ones that are absolutely huge. This is 11.5 quarts, and you can see it takes up quite a bit of room on my stove. So this is as big as I can go with all the other things I need to have on the stove at once. Inside, I have a canning rack. And that's extremely important because it helps keep the jars off the bottom. You need to make sure that that hot water can get at 360 degrees around that jar to really make sure it's getting up to that hot enough temperature to be safe. So that's an extremely important element. Moving on from actually canning, we have a couple of essentials to get things into the jars. So what I typically do is make 8-ounce jars, which is a half pint. I find that's a great way to give things away to people. It's not going to be too much. It's just a perfect amount. So you, of course, need to have your jar, and you can do any size you want. With a jar, you're going to need a lid and a rim. So those are the key elements of the jar itself. But what you need to get all of your deliciousness into this? Well, the first thing you need is a funnel. Something that is very special to me about canning is both this and this are my husband's great-grandmothers. So it's very, very special to me to be able to can with that much history. It's very neat. So you need your funnel to get all the berries in. Then you need this little measurer. And the point of this is to make sure you have enough room between where your preserves end and the lid starts. It's extremely important to make sure that none of the jams or jellies touch the lid during the canning process. It can have an impact on how it actually sets. So you want to make sure that you have it an appropriate length down. So this goes from 1/4 inch to 1 inch. And the amount of space you want down is going to depend on what you are actually canning. I do not have anything fancy for this, but one thing you need to do is you make sure you get all of the air bubbles out. So I just use this little prong for that. Shift away from those for just a moment. You need 2 other things on the stove. One, of course, is your big pot. I am unfortunately showing you just one of ours. Something else that's very special to me when I'm canning is I do have my grandmother's wide-bottomed pan. However, it's actually my mom's right now, and I stole it from her, and she stole it back. Rude, I know. But so anyway, I'll be stealing it back from her in a couple weeks when I make some more of my canning. But so I'm just using this typical one today. The other thing you're going to need on the stove is another smaller pot to put in boiling water, because you are going to sterilize your lids in that while you're in the process of canning. It also makes them a little more pliable, so the sealing goes well. That brings us to a little magnet. When those lids are in boiling water, you don't really want to stick your finger. So you take this, it's a little magnet right in the end, and you use that to lift it up and plop it right back on top of the jar. It's pretty cool. So now we have our deliciousness. We've gotten it into our jar. We have gotten rid of all of the air bubbles. We have made sure that it is the right amount. And we have lifted our lid onto the jar and sealed it finally with our rim. We still have this big pot of boiling water. So you take something that is called a jar lifter. And this fits just right around here. And it is meant to go in the boiling water. So you just take this, and you are going to lower that down onto the canning rack. There are also some other things you may need depending depending on what you're making. If you are making a jam, but you want to do it seedless, you might need a squeezo to get rid of all of those seeds. If you are doing applesauce, you may need an apple peeler corer if you're going to take those out first, and different things like that. But hopefully this has given you some good information on the essentials of canning, and I hope you hit that subscribe button down below and then the little bell icon, which will notify you every time we post a video, so that you can see our actual canning videos when I'm making some different recipes. And along with that, make sure you check out our blog, themnhomestead.com, and lastly follow us on Instagram, where we post all kinds of fun updates pretty much every single day, and that's at the.mn.homestead. And we will see you next time here at the homestead.